It was an absolutely, you're not getting back on a horse. I mean, I had one doctor say to me, just forget about your legs. A friend of mine gave me a bracelet not long after my accident saying she believed she could. So she did. That is 100% how I live my life.
Hello, happy Wednesday. Slightly more successful introduction this today. You can actually say hello. Last week was a bit of a mess, wasn't it? How are you doing? How's your week been? Well, how's your days been?
Days have been good. Harley is on such good form at the moment. We went show jumping.
It's so nice that you keep saying that. Do you know what I mean?
He really is, though. He just feels great and he looks so happy and I'm just like, my little diamond angel. But I had an experience this morning that really made me think.
Yeah.
You're laughing because Miri got a different version of this story after it happened, but I'm going to tell you the one that's actually useful. So you know how, was it Jane who we had from the Equestrian system who said sometimes people need to have things put in their own experience to understand how the horse might be feeling? So I had to go for a blood test this morning, and I know a lot of people don't like needles, but I'm really quite afraid of needles, and I always have been. And I got better, and I was sort of okay. I'd sort of worked out a system for it, which was like, if I just don't look at any of the equipment and I just look away, then I'm fine. But then I had a really bad blood test a few years ago. They took forever. It hurt. I ended up passing out. It was quite traumatic. And after that, I've really struggled. So you do these walk-ins now. You have to take a ticket and then you have to sit in the waiting room. And so I'm sat there like trying to do breathing and trying to be calm. And this ticket person that every now and then someone just comes out and goes, 76. And then you have to sit there for a few minutes, 77. And it's just absolutely, I can't think of a worse scenario for someone who's anxious than that. And you just see your number getting closer and closer. And I've got like tears coming out of my eyes in the waiting room. And I'm trying not to freak out because there's loads of people. And I go into this like booth with this lovely porter. And he's like, hello, are you okay? And I just literally burst into tears. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And then I like covered my face because I was so embarrassed that I responded like that. And I was like, I'm so afraid of needles. I'm so sorry. And he was like, oh, darling, it's okay. He was like, it's going to be fine. And anyway, he sat me down and he was really nice. And I know how terrified I was because he was asking me questions, as they do, while he's doing it. And I literally was like, yeah, it's a nice... I was so terrified I couldn't speak. It was awful. Anyway, it was actually fine, but it made me think that when I was younger, I had you know when you have jabs in school and sometimes they're a bit rough with you because they're kind of like, I've got loads of kids to do and I don't have time for your scared tears. And I think that sort of cemented my relationship with needles and jabs. And it made me think about our horses and how sometimes people are like, I don't have time for you to be scared. Get on with it. And we kind of just force our horses to do these things. And then how terrifying that is to be just like plunged into these situations. And I was thinking like, what would the equivalent be? Like if you've had a rough start or a rough backing process, and then you have to go back to the thing like bridling or whatever it is. And you either get a Miri who's like, it's all right, darling. You're going to be fine. Like, I'm going to use the baby
guy today.
Like my guy today. Who's like, I'm going to use the baby needle and this is where I grew up. And he was telling me about how he used to work on a chicken farm and all this stuff. Oh. You either get that, Miri and her chickens, or you get someone who's like, I don't have time for you to be scared. So just stand there. And like, I don't know, it just really made me think about it. And actually I was hacking afterwards this morning after my blood test. And Harley was like looking at something. And I've been working really hard not to kind of grab the rein and to just kind of let him do that and move his body through his ribcage instead of from his head, which sounds obvious, but obviously sometimes we have to have things told to us. And so I let him look at this thing and he put his head right down and I didn't touch his head at all. And he was so like, it was kind of like a little bit nervous, but also quite curious. And I was like, oh, today I get to be like, it's okay, darling.
Yeah.
We're going to look at this together. And so that was quite a useful little moment, I think.
I think there's a kind of, people talk about it like if you train through fear, the reality is there's always going to be something more scary.
Yeah.
And like if you are training the horse to do something by being scared of you to do it, like you're saying, like they're scared of something and you're like, well, I don't care, get on with it, come on, be more scared of me than you are of the plastic bag in the hedge or whatever it might be. That it just doesn't actually solve the problem. It just causes more problems further down the line. And Yeah, I think it's really valuable to actually sometimes to do that and to make that reflection of putting things into a human perspective. I do that sort of thing a lot actually when I'm teaching, is I really try and help people understand the thing that is happening by explaining it in a human way. Like, this is the same as X, Y, Z, like you were saying. Yeah. This is the same as you going for a blood test and you being really frightened and somebody shoving you closer and holding you down and saying that it just has to happen.
I do remember, like, when I went and got up and they called my number, I remember distinctly feeling like, oh my God, I just need a moment. I need a second, or I'm just going to panic. And I was really afraid that he was just going to be like, sit down, and then just like, which obviously he was never going to do. But that feeling, I remember being like, whoa, like that's what it's like when your horse is like, I just need a second. And you can choose to give them that, or you can push and push and push. Yeah.
And the reality is, most of the time, given the time to process the moment, the reality is so often horses just go, oh yeah, actually, okay, that's fine. But if they go, oh, I'm not sure about that, and you say, get on with it, da 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 da, the energy of the I'm not sure is heightened by your energy. Whereas if you let the energy just dissipate, like you did with Harley when he was hacking, the energy it will just simmer down. Now we are speaking about this in a sense of, if you are already riding a very overstimulated horse all the time, then you've got to do some work elsewhere from the ground if that horse is in a constant state of alert, to empty the stress bucket so that there's less things contributing all the time. And then the spooking is essentially the straw that breaks the camel's back. We're not talking about these sort of moments where, you know, the extremities basically. But yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm so with you on the just giving it a moment, you know, and realizing that in yourself is so powerful, because their nervous system works in a very similar way to ours. And I've been talking to a lot about people about horses down-regulating, and learning how to down-regulate ourselves can be a huge way. It was what we were talking about nervous system stuff when we were talking about the work you've been doing with Nikki and the work that I've been doing with Bev. It is so much about down-regulating your nervous system. And I saw a post on social media a week or so ago that was talking about a study. So this came from science. This hasn't just come from someone's speculation, where they were talking about when horses lick and chew and yawn. And you and I were talking about it, weren't we? Because you mentioned sometimes that, like, Harley will yawn sometimes in certain circumstances. After a hack. And actually, it's not necessarily just a sign of, oh, they're really relaxed. It's a sign of them a sign of them down-regulating their nervous system from sympathetic, so their fight-flight, into their rest and digest. Now, you will be passing between fight, flight and rest and digest all the time. It's not like if you're really stressed, you're in your fight, flight. You know, you could be in your fight, flight when you walk too fast. So that down-regulation is happening, up-regulation, down-regulation is happening all the time. And our up-regulation is happening to keep us safe. So, like, you have to run to cross the road, for example. Up-regulation. You then go, okay, I've crossed the road. No danger. You might actually, if you're noticing it, you might notice that you want to yawn or down-regulate. And it's that awareness point of what do the things our horses do really mean? And we've talked about it, haven't we? Because Harley has found hacking stressful.
I remember saying to you, like, he doesn't yawn after schooling, really. I mean, maybe occasionally I'm like, and I know he finds hacking on his own a bit difficult. And it's happening, like, sometimes it happens when he's in company too, but he always, I get off and he does this big yawn. And I remember saying to you, like, I wonder if he's just feeling a bit stressed and that doesn't make me feel good. And, like, you know, I think you were saying this, basically.
Yeah, and also, I don't know why this seems to have come up in conversation quite a lot recently, but when we train horses, we do have to understand that the human environment is a fairly stressful thing for them. Right? It is not totally natural. You know, it's not just like being in a huge herd of horses in the field. And actually, if we want our horses to feel comfortable and have a flow state with us in a human environment, in an arena, at a show, out on a hack, on a road, whatever it might be, not just in the field with their herd friends, we do need to know where the edge of their comfort zone is so that we can expand their comfort zone. Horses that live in the wild, their nervous system and their comfort zone would be very narrow, it would be very small. So actually, when we have horses in the human environment, there are certain things that we can do to help expand their comfort zone. But the only way that their comfort zone can expand is by getting close to the edge of what is comfortable for them. And I don't mean comfortable in terms of physical comfort, but I mean comfort in terms of
psychological safety, emotional safety.
Thank you. So it's like that, where is that stretch zone? And how can we help our horses, especially when they're young, just slightly expand their comfort zone into that stretch zone and then back into their comfort zone and then back into that stretch zone. And then what you notice is the stretch zone gets bigger and bigger. Their awareness, their acceptance, their comfort with more difficult things becomes bigger and bigger until you get to the point where you can ride them around comfortably. You can go to a show. It's not a total overload, but we do have to use, skill to help them get from that very, small comfort zone to that bigger one. And we can't do that without ever becoming slightly closer to that edge. And it's that up regulation, down regulation that we need to become aware of. What does it look like when our horse is becoming upregulated, and what does it look like when they're becoming downregulated? Because we don't want to be training stressed horses. We don't want to be working with horses that are totally out of their comfort zone and all over the place. But at the same time, there is an element of knowing the edge of the comfort zone so that we can slightly expand it. And this might get me a few comments because I'm interested on people's take on it. And I think it's because it's so nuanced that it's not. I imagine people are imagining me training stressed horses, and that's not what I mean.
No.
It's complicated.
Sometimes we get it wrong, and I think actually me and Harley are a great example of this, because Harley can boil over really quite quickly, and when he boils over, he stands up. That's his sort of default of saying, I'm out, I can't do it, it's way too much. And if he's got to that point, I've missed a few, at least 3, I'd say, moments of him going, it's getting a bit hard, actually.
Yeah, the upregulation, and then the explosion. Yeah, or the rear. Or
and obviously,
whatever.
I'm getting better and better at noticing when that's happening. And one of the videos I put up recently from dressage camp was the conversation with my dressage coach, who was like, the aim is for him never to get there, obviously. And you should feel really confident that when you're feeling in his body that he's just coming up, that you can just put the world away and be like, no, we're just going to bring this back down because you're okay. And you're safe. But it takes time. I've had Harley almost 2 years, and, getting that nuance right is only just starting to come. And I'm sure there are lots of people that would have got there quicker. But I think if there are people listening to this who are like, oh yeah, I definitely know my horse boils over at this and this, like, it is a nuance and it does take time to get it right.
And I think that the way that I now do things with the groundwork is an amazing, transport system for that, because you're able not to have to experience the hard thing, like the big pattern. You can train at the very small thing. If you've got no idea what I'm talking about and you're like, I'm quite interested in this, I do talk about it all on my Patreon, so feel free to head over there. Little plug of my online training platform. But I do think, for aware equestrians, this is a very interesting topic of conversation, and one that I think I'm learning about all the time. And the more regulated I am, which I didn't realise how dysregulated I was, the more regulated my horses are able to be. And the more that they join me in my regulation, if they're dysregulated. Like with the young ones, just noticing when they lose their focus, they take their focus away to something else in the hedge, in the field, whatever it might be. And my tendency now is just to stop with them and look, be aware of whatever it might be a herd mate, like, oh, what are we looking at over there? Oh, yeah, okay, there's some birds in the field. Oh, yeah, okay. And then they come back in the same way, because I didn't go, don't do that, come back to me, I need it. I just go, oh yeah, what are we looking at? And that's
like another horse would do. An older horse would be like, they wouldn't be like, look at me, we should be over here. Like horses don't understand. I think this is the funny thing that we often forget, is they don't understand the difference between us grabbing the reins and putting the leg on because we want them to get past the spooky thing. They just think we're also scared of the thing they're spooking at. And I do have to remind myself of that sometimes, of like, if you want to not make this a thing, don't make this a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And like I have this description of the type of rider that I encourage people to be when we first go hacking on their newly backed young horse, or it might not be newly backed, but the horse that they're getting back to riding again since we've been doing what we're doing. And I call it the productive potato. So
I've heard you say this.
Yeah, I might have talked about it on the podcast before, but like you can imagine a potato is quite like heavy and consistent, but it's not really very active. Does that make sense? So you want to be like there for your horse in a consistent, gentle, soft potatoey way, but not sort of tight and stiff and like holding and you're gonna go. And it's that sort of way of being on the horse where you're there for them, but you're not really like actively doing something. You're a bit of a potato about it. And I really find this was a really good way of explaining to people this kind of partnership feeling where you're there with them, but you're not trying to like do it all for them or impart some of your energy into them. Yeah, I mean, it's all just such a kind of interesting thing, and it's so cool to see you and Harley really like making these steps together, you know, because I mean that's just the whole point in all of this, right? Like that bond.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
totally.
Well done. We want to take a moment to talk about Season 3's headline sponsor, White Griffin. White Griffin have an amazing resource hub on their website all about equestrians for nature. So they've got some documents that you can go and download and print out. And we're going to talk about, as we are at the midpoint of our season, some of the things that have really stood out to us that really hit home. So for me, one of the things that we've spoken about is like being sustainable by sourcing things locally. So I actually found out recently that the bedding that I use, which is called Sundown, which is a straw-based chopped bedding, was actually being harvested on the field right next to my house.
So
and then
cool.
It's being transported a couple of miles up the M1 to Sundown HQ, where they then process it and turn it into the bedding. And for me, that felt like a really good, like, affirming moment, because it reminded me why I choose to use that bedding. Are you using shavings that has maybe been transported a very long distance? Could you make a swap to something more sustainable, like chopped straw? What about you, Rhi? What's really stuck out for you?
I think it's the stuff that just feels super simple. Looking after your tack and your boots to make sure that they last longer. I obviously love to clean everything, but it's so easy. Like, you can do that without buying anything, and really there's no extra effort. It's just making sure you do it. And similarly, repairing your rugs, repairing your coats, for example, so they can last a bit longer, getting them reproofed maybe. Like, this all falls under the blanket of sustainability, which is cool.
We have spoken about Westgate previously, but moving to a less blanket worming protocol and a much more worm egg counting based process means that you are reducing the number of chemicals that are going into the land, which is then encouraging flora and fauna and making sure that those lovely little dung beetles can do their job.
Yeah, as lovely Jane told us a couple of episodes ago, thinking about your horse as part of the wider ecosystem. So how can you plant things or let grass grow a bit longer where it's maybe not being used for anything to create a bit of a haven for wildlife?
I met the White Griffin team at Windsor this year, and one of the things that they were doing was encouraging people to write on their big blackboard what wildlife they have seen around their yard. We had a bumblebee nest in our wash bay, and we were like, oh my god, we've got to do something about this. Turns out no, we can just let them exist and do their thing. And you know, being a safe place where we don't have horrible chemicals on the yard means that we can have a bumblebee nest, and it's perfectly good and lovely. Being sustainable can get a bit of a bad rep, right? It can be a bit of a kind of maybe a bit boring. But the reality is, if we want to have horses who are thriving in their environment, if we can do more sustainable things that we have mentioned today, then our horses actually get to have a more equine suitable environment too.
So we're going to link to the poster, which has some of the top things you can do on your yard for sustainability on the White Griffin website, and you can look for that in the show notes.
Back to the episode.
So on today's podcast, we are so excited to have Jemima Green with us. So I was lucky enough to meet Jemima a couple of years ago when I was doing social media for a dressage rider and coach, and she happened to be coaching Jemima, and then I got to spend quite a bit of time with her and do a few bits and pieces for social. So Jemima is somebody who grew up riding and used to event, and is now a grade 2 para dressage rider and has just been picked for the European team for the UK. So Jemima, we are so excited to have you here and just hear all about what's going on with you and your lovely horse Fanta. Thank you for having us. No, wait. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
She's so polite. Her politeness spills over into the wrong way around.
So there's so many things that I want to ask you, Jemima, but maybe we start kind of at the beginning. Tell us a bit about how you got into horses and riding.
Honestly, like age 2, there was something that just drew me to horses, and I can't pinpoint what particular thing it was, but my parents were like, you were just obsessed, and that was it. And it was always something that my dad and I did together. I was brought up in Exmoor, and it was very much learning how to ride, out hacking, going on the moors, did a little bit of pony club, but I was at boarding school, so I was very much could ride when I was home, but then otherwise it was away at school. So I didn't actually get into competing until I was probably maybe like 20 years old, like after I've college and things like that. Like I knew at age 16, after my GCSEs, I wanted to work with horses full time, and I just bought like a recently backed thoroughbred who was just wild, but that's what I loved. And I was like, why am I going back to do my A-levels when I wanted to be working with horses and wanted to ride my horse Ebony? So I very abruptly left and went to Kingston Ward in Dorchester, did 2 years there, and then worked in the industry.
Wow. And so tell us about eventing with Ebony. So were you working on a yard and eventing at the same time, or how was that? How did that work?
Yeah, so I started off as a working pupil. There was so much to learn. Like you know, yes, I knew about horses and I knew, basic stuff, but it's learning the studs and how the whole eventing days work and the training of event horses, young horses. Like it's such a huge industry, and I was very lucky. Like through many years, I went and got based at Aston Walls in Daventry, and I love going there now. Like I still feel like I go home there. And I'd worked as a working pupil for Nigel Taylor, and then I had a little bit of itchy feet and thought I needed a bit of a fallback, and so I actually enrolled in beauty college. And at the same time as eventing, after working for Nigel, I basically went to Whitney and studied beauty college and had my horse on livery and evented at the same time, and then worked for a lovely rider, Bruce Haskell, who's a New Zealand rider, and managed to juggle both sides of my life. And then I finished the season with him, and he got me and Ebony going to intermediate, which was such
Amazing.
a huge achievement for us because she was only 15-1. And then I ended up going back to Aston Walls after, working in the beauty industry for a little bit and on a private yard, and went to work as a head girl for Jodie Amos. And I absolutely loved working for her, and eventually was her head girl and second rider. So I was so lucky to ride young horses that came in for sale, a gorgeous little pony. It was just absolutely everything that I wanted to do.
Oh my god, I didn't know all of that. I knew that you evented Ebony because obviously I saw your pictures and stuff, but I didn't know that you'd done all of this cool stuff with the riders as well. That's epic. So obviously there was a point in your life where you transitioned from eventing to your professional riding career now, which is as a para dressage rider. So talk to us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, so in 2015 I was involved in a road traffic accident, which has left me completely paralysed from the waist down. And then I had a lot of abdominal injuries from the seatbelt. And I was in a coma for a few days. And when I came out of it, apparently one of the first things I said to my dad was, oh, it must be the Paralympics now. And I had no idea what actually happened to me. It must have been some weird link, brain, body. And then I just apparently went all back to, you know, my drug-induced sleep. And I still don't recall like the point of actually really realizing what had happened to me. I remember kind of being in an MRI and like not being able to move, but not really figuring out why I can't move. And then, yeah, I knew I wanted to get back to horses and riding, but it was very much like I don't know how far I'm going to be able to go, but I'm going to give it a go and then just see what happens.
I mean, obviously very serious injuries that you sustained. Were they, you know, the doctors like relatively positive about stuff, or, you know, was it the classic like, oh goodness, no, you're not going to ride a horse again, don't be mental, you know, like what was that like? What was that whole kind of period like?
It was an absolutely, you're not getting back on a horse, point blank. I mean, I had one doctor say to me, just forget about your legs, which I think is a negative way, because whether I chose to ride or not, I can't forget about my legs, because I've got a high risk of, you know, bruising, pressure sores, cuts, you know, same amount as everybody else. And then I did have a really good intensive care psychologist. I can't think of the word, but she basically really looked into it a little bit for me and actually looked into, oh, there's, you know, show jumping and this, like that. And I was like, oh, can I jump?
That is so
That
cool.
was like, absolutely, I'm not even going to try that. Like, trot balls scare me. And she really helped me. And then actually, it wasn't the neuro spinal guy. It was the orthopedic guy that did my actual fixation in my back. And he was like, do you know what, Jemima, you've got to live your life. Just be careful. And, you know, we don't throw me on young horses. Fanta was 4 when I bought him. But, you know, we are selective. But I've got a really big problem of almost going my previous head of like what caliber of horse that I love and want to be able to ride to actually what is realistic. But saying that, Fanta he is absolutely high caliber of a horse, but he's got a brilliant temperament. But yeah, we do have to be logical and careful and obviously try and limit accidents. But horses are horses and you can never predict what is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, so talk us through, because obviously I know I've seen you ride and seen your setup, but talk us through your setup, your tack and the equipment and how you ride and your aid, so people can get a picture of how you and Fanta work together.
Yeah, so my saddle is probably my best friend for sure. It's got a handle made on the front, which is really hard, and to be fair, I don't really use it a lot, but it has been there at times. Like if I've had a little bit of a loss of balance, I can just grab it. It is easier to grab than a neck strap because it is just there and it is so secure. And then I have stitched into my straps Velcro like thigh straps into the saddle, so they are over my thighs, but they are very much designed that they are to release if I was to come away from the saddle. And then I have elastic bands that keep my feet in the stirrups, because I have no, you know, real pressure going into my feet, and so without that they would just like slip out of the stirrups. And then I use safety stirrups as well, so if I was to come away, my feet can fall free. And then I do have like a really, really good support team that lift me onto Fanta and then help me get off as well.
Would it be okay to ask like what feeling you have? I guess I'm trying to understand and give people an idea of kind of where you're at on the scale of para, I guess, because I think it's something that maybe people don't know a huge amount, and sometimes I guess when we watch the Olympics it gets explained, but in this moment could you explain a little bit about that,
maybe the different grades?
The different grades.
Yeah, so grades go from 1 being the most disabled and 5 being, say, the least impaired. And the grade 1 tests are just walk. My test as a grade 2 is walk lateral work, and trot, including some medium trot. Grade 3 is walk and trot, but they do have to do a little bit more elements of trot, like they have to do trot lateral work. Then grade 4s and 5s are walk, trot, canter. They'll have simple changes. I mean, grade 5 could be about advanced medium, especially for the freestyle. So there is still some real technical moves that need to be done, and accuracy. And then in regards to like my sensation, I can't feel my seat at all. So I've had to learn a lot of learning where I am in the saddle, and that's been through being drilled of you're not sat straight, and kind of then having to learn what does feel right for me and what feels normal for me. Like I can kind of tell if my foot comes out the stirrup. It's very rare, but it's like my balance just slightly shifts one way and I can feel it. But I wouldn't be able to influence the horse using my seat at all.
And I know from having watched you ride that you use 2 long sticks when you're riding as part of your aid. So how did you, because you bought Fanta when he was 4, so did you back him with your team to those aids, or was he backed kind of quote unquote traditionally and then you transitioned to the aids?
No, so he was, as you say, traditionally backed. When I went to try him with my trainer, she tried him as she would a normal horse, and then took her leg aids off and felt how he responded to like voice and the like how comfortable was he with 2 schooling whips. Like he, still being 4 years old, you don't know how much they've really done. And then it's quite funny because when we threw me on, we actually forgot to do up one of my leg straps, and I started trotting round, and I was like, oh, my not strapped up. And he was so well balanced though, and had been produced so beautifully that it hadn't noticed. So we did my leg up, and he was just really naturally forward thinking. And that's the thing, for somebody who doesn't have any leg aids, they have to still be naturally forward and naturally go on their own. That's a good starting block. And I also, when I look at buying a horse, I have to look at if it doesn't work for me, because you never know, a bit like anybody buying a horse, are we going to be the right match? Has he then also got the qualities to sell on if he's not going to work for me? And he was certainly talented enough. But then through our then normal training, when we got him, it was very much normal kind of work, because he still is developing and growing and needs to be trained, but then also introducing, every time he's ridden, the voice aids when it comes to doing a trot transition. How comfortable is he learning with the whips? And he just took to it so well. And now he's 7 years old, and we pretty much rely all off voice aid. We've got him so tuned up to our voice that the whips are very much there as a backup. But he's just so on it with the voice cues, and like we whistle for him to do like a half halt now, kissing noise for like a medium trot, and like a little bit of popping sound if we want a little bit more cadence and upward. Like he and it's so specific, but you have to be so strict on yourself so you're not going around clicking at everything. But he's really clever, and that does help.
That is such an amazing reminder. There is a fair amount. We were just talking about it actually before you came on, about like training horses through fear and how that really isn't the right thing to do, and how force and fear are just not a good thing in the horsey world. And it is so cool to hear that when needs must, we can train horses to compete at a really good level in an amazing way just through your voice. That is, I just think that's really inspiring to remember, and a really good pertinent reminder that actually you can, and it's not, doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah, I think it's changed so much. I look at myself from my previous riding life to now, and I'm like, I feel like I'm such a better rider now than I was previously, because I think I do have a better understanding, because I need to understand way more, and I feel like my feel has to be so much more than it was before. How I influence the horse, like if my balance goes slightly, like only this week we were away and I just thought something's not going right, and he was getting a little bit, like I say, snatchy in his right rein, but it was my balance that was affecting him. It's not him being an evasion or something. And it's like actually looking at ourselves more, riders. Like there is no such thing as a naughty horse or a horse that they don't understand, but why don't they understand? And then it's like taking a step back, taking a breath and going, okay, are we sure the horse understands what we're asking? Are we sure everything else is aligned and okay? And actually we rebalance the saddle a bit better, and then, oh look, it's sort of going a bit better and I'm not getting unbalanced. But I do think that natural feel that you have as a rider is so important, and trusting the gut instinct of it. But we do a lot of work on the ground with the horses as well, and then they almost understand those voice cues a little bit without the pressure of a rider, so you're not confusing them by throwing a load of aids at them at one go. They have to understand that on the ground first as well.
This is a very interesting, as Miri said, it feels very progressive, and especially when we look at dressage as a whole, and there's a lot of conversation around turnout and horses who don't get varied lifestyles and all of that stuff. And I know that you do a lot of hacking with Fanta, for example. You do stuff on the ground, you do stuff through the voice. So maybe give us a picture into what a typical week might look like, or the week that's just gone. Maybe that sounds like it was kind of fun and interesting.
Well, the week just gone was mad because we were actually away at pre-Europeans camp. But so really, Fanta would probably go in the school, schooling wise, 3, maybe 4 times a week, but it would be varied. Like last week, for example, he went really, really well with me on like what would be our day 3 of schooling. And I was like, I don't feel like I need to go in the school with him, but actually I got Georgie to go in the school with him and worked him a little bit more in his way, but in like a let's engage his core, work over his back a bit more, because his weaker part is behind the back of the saddle, so we still need to strengthen that up. So actually him not having to have me, who can only do sitting trot on him, we still have to remember that he is developing and he is growing, and he needs to have some focused riding on just him. And then he'll go out every day, like 4 or 5 hours a day. We've managed to increase that because we've moved to a new yard in the last month. And then hacking, we have just found the most amazing hacking around our new yard, and actually Georgie and I got lost and we were out for an hour and 20 minutes.
It's like being kids again.
And I was going around hacking with Georgie going, this reminds me of my old life. Like we were in woodlands, down skinny tracks, like I was having to lean down under trees, and it was just the best feeling. And like we took Foxy and Fanta out, and I was like, this is such a good reminder of why we do it as well. Like I think it's so important that the horses can do that, but also for me, I hate being trapped in the school, and one of the biggest things that I missed when I first got back riding was hacking, because as a mentor we did so much hacking, and obviously I got to go cross country schooling, go jumping, so actually going out on all terrains is so good for my body and my balance, and almost training but away from the school. And when you're away at competitions, you can't control everything that's going around on and things, so you almost like have to get used to the everything around you, which hacking provides. So yeah, that was so much fun. And then like Fanta, then he'll definitely have 1, but maybe 2 days off a week. Like he's had the last 2 days off because he's worked really, really hard and it's been so hot, and he's got a lot coming up, but he is 7. He needs to have the time to develop.
You were saying that, you go hacking and you have like a normal horse life with your horse. You are obviously an elite athlete and you're going to the Europeans, and this is seriously cool stuff. But you are also doing like normal, doing some air quotes, stuff with him too. And I just wondered, I wonder if there are people out there who maybe have sustained injuries, or they have had, you know, difficult things happen in their lives. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about your confidence. Like, did you find that there was a lot that you had to work on, or was it the want to do it overrode maybe the doubt? I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just interested in that part of the conversation.
No, I still do struggle with confidence. It's always the what if for me. I do this because I love the horses and I love what I do. And I think the day that you stop loving it is the day you need to stop. And I think that's why it's so important to keep it so varied. And I have really struggled with like music. And it's my personality. I'm very much like you tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm a bit of control freak. And people are like, oh, but it's the same, just draw a floor plan. I'm like, no. Because what if you're a bit behind your music? I get really like anxious over it. And then I don't trust myself to be able to make those little adjustments. And I have definitely, it has been an absolute building steps of like, starting from the most dominant RDA pony that would like just keep going round and round in circles until, you know, I mean, to be fair, I could only do 10 minutes when I first got on if I was lucky. And then it was like build up to the little 14-2 pony. Then I got Jules, and like it was very much like having to build up that stamina and that confidence on each horse. And I still, you know, absolutely go in. It's very much going, I know what I'm doing in the tests, but I'm going in on a young horse that, you know, he's only done one full season with me because he can't start power until they're 6 years old. And I feel like I need to hold his hand sometimes. And it's trusting my body and trusting him. But like I got taught how to canter on a wonderful horse, Oki. And it was always like, I want to do it, but I'm scared of what my body's going to do. I never know how my body's going to react to a certain situation, because once my balance goes, I jackknife. I can't get back up. So it's very much the what ifs. And I think that's kind of really relatable to everybody. Like nobody knows what's going to happen. But I think what I've learned is the more I kind of back off it, the more I almost create a situation. I have to go in there feeling confident, and it's fake it till you make it sometimes. Like I know what I can do and I know my test, I know how to ride it. I just need to go in there and actually go, no, come on, we can do this, rather than going, oh, I'm not too sure.
And do you think that your preparation is the thing that holds it together in that moment? You know, like, although your brain might be going, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this, but actually all of that work that you've put in with your trainers, all of that awareness that you learn, those are the things that your mind and your body will fall back on in those moments. It's almost like it has to become autonomous.
100%. And I think it's, as long as you know you have done everything that you can physically control and mentally control, because you've got to mentally control your emotions, then you can go in there going, I've done my best, and feel confident 110%. I've done everything I can towards it. But I have to say, having the right people around you, or well, certainly for me, is one of the biggest confidence boosters you can have. Like building the right people that have full confidence in you, your team, but you have full confidence that they are giving their all and have your best interests at heart. And I think that's the biggest thing, like having a team that they want to be there for me. And that's the thing, like I came away from Hagen with one of the girls that like who rides Fanta going, she came away from that feeling so inspired just from watching all the other paras and everything. And it was her first experience going abroad with us like us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she really wants to be here. Like she wants to do this as much as us. And that's the thing. It's, you can't just have a good rider. You've got to have an amazing rider, but who really understands like my horse, my needs, my requirements, and focuses in on that. And I know like I have full confidence in my team. And so that gives me full confidence. And they are the biggest girl hype team ever. And like we really are like really trying to push each other's whatever part of life it is. And you do build such a strong relationship. You can't do this job, any job with equestrian, to be honest, without having the right people around you, because you are spending your whole life with them pretty much. Probably I spend more time with them than I do with Ed. And so you've got to get along. You've got to have trust and faith in each other for sure.
This feels very relatable, actually. We talk about this a lot, particularly around finding the right coaches and how people really struggle with finding the right coach for them, but also what to say when it's not the right coach, and how to kind of walk away from a relationship. So did it take you a little while to find the right team and the right person? And what's your sort of advice and perspective on that?
Yes, it has taken a long time. And, you say things aren't always forever. You never know what's going to happen around the corner. Like, I don't want anything to change. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm so happy. But when it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right for a reason. I've got to learn to listen to my gut. My gut has told me so much stuff. And I'm like, I should have listened to that sooner. And my body does also I'm quite in tune with my body, and when things aren't right, I will openly admit I can have panic attacks, and they very rarely happen now because I'm happy, but that is normally when my body is going, enough is enough. And I have had a lot of help with realizing you can't control other people's emotions, other people's feelings. And then something we have learnt along the way is being positively selfish. And we stand by that a lot. And it's not that you're being selfish just for selfish reasons. You're going, what is right for me? My horse is my career. And everybody has a right to be positively selfish at the end of the day. And I felt like at some times I wasn't doing justice for my horses and myself, staying in certain situations. And I feel like I would have been wasting the quality of my horses if I hadn't moved on. And so I just think you've got to really look at, what are my goals? What are my aims? Am I going to get there? Do I feel like I'm in the right place to be doing this? And I think you really have to really figure out, what do you want? And then you can go from there. Like, I very much look at, okay, LA's in a few years, and what are my goals to get there? What do I need to achieve to get there? It doesn't mean I'm going to get it, but as long as I can go into that confidently, knowing I've done everything in my power, you never know what's going to happen. You've got to look at what you want to do.
Yeah. I don't want to jinx anything, but you've said it now. So let's talk a bit about competition. Let's talk about the Europeans, and then maybe, if you want to, touching on LA. So maybe talk to us about, the competition goals and getting into the Europeans. We're just going to take a moment to thank the other sponsor of our episode, Equine Biogenie. Last week, we spoke about Equine Biogenie's disinfectant, and this week, we're going to speak about their water treatment. Miri, fill us in.
So this is a really smart piece of kit, and something that I have using regularly on my yard. So water troughs often go green and can contain a lot of algae and a build-up of naturally occurring bacterias and all sorts of things that we don't necessarily want our horses to be drinking. So the way that the water treatment works is you clean out the trough completely, you empty it out, you give it a good scrub, and then you refill it and you add a certain volume of the water treatment. Now, this is totally safe to drink. It's antibacterial, it's antifungal, it's antivirucidal, so it will kill all of those nasty things, but without damaging natural tissue or anything that we need for health. And what it does is it keeps the balance of the water perfect, so then you don't get that green, that algae build-up, that bacterial build-up, where, horses' water is often sitting still for a long time, and when water is still, that is when you get the problems of the build-up. So for you, Rhi, it would be really useful when you're going out to your camps, potentially.
Yes.
You have a small amount of your water treatment. You could put it directly into the water drinker, and then you would know that it was clean. If you were maybe provided with buckets, you could use it in those buckets. And you could also use it just to help the water be the same as it is at home.
Yes, exactly. And that's something we've heard people talk about, which is that, their horses don't drink when they're away from home. The water tastes different. Actually, if you use a little bit in both, then the horse's water is always going to taste the same, which can be helpful. If you want to learn more about Equine Biogenie and their products, you can head to the show notes.
Find a little discount code there too.
Back to the podcast.
I have to say, it wasn't really something we thought we were going to get to this year at all. Like, Fanta being 7 years old and on his second season, this year was about building our confidence, going abroad. That was like one of our biggest goals for this year. Get competition experience abroad, go against the other riders. And he's just been such an overachiever. I'm not going to lie, it is amazing. Like, he has just blossomed. And so just to get the nomination, I was like gobsmacked and so privileged to have had that. I was so grateful for just that opportunity. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. But the caliber of riders we were against and horses, you know, I was like, we're not going to get it, and that's okay. You know, we've got Worlds next year we can aim for, or the Europeans after that. Let's keep building on our, you know, what we've been doing. And then to get the call, I was speechless, and then I had a little cry, and I literally was and then I got a phone call a few days later, and I thought, and they went, oh, Jemima, there's something we want to talk to you about. And I thought, oh, they've made a mistake. Like, I literally was,
oh, stop.
I really didn't quite believe it. And then I did feel sick for a couple of weeks, and I still, like, it, I don't know whether it's 100% really hit me. We're going through all the shopping list that I need and all this, and obviously we've done training camp now, and I'm just still a bit like, okay, yeah, it is actually happening. It's surreal.
Yeah, it's huge. Really, I mean, it's huge. How do you I don't want to say do you have a vision board, because that's very specific, but do you vision plan? Do you like set goals? How do you think about the things coming up, especially when you have got things like Worlds, Europeans, LA that do need quite forward planning? Do you think about these things and write them down, or? I
don't completely write them down like a full-on vision board. I am a very visual person, but I think I could overwhelm myself by doing that much. But so, for example, when we went to Hagen, we wrote on big post-its and stuck our goals for that week up in the lorry. And so it was really like would have been so easy to kind of go, we want to go out there and do, like, get 77% or, you know, whatever. But it was our first international. So what were our goals for it? And it was, you know, have fun, embrace new challenges, you know, build up Fanta's confidence and our confidence as a team. You know, it was, and I think so for me, having those little ones, and I think, you know, we're going to do the same for Euros, and because I am visual and it does help. It helps, but also we did it as a team. We sat in the lorry, so every single one of us knew what were our goals and our team goals, so nobody could almost get confused or, like, you know, I say overachieve. You always overachieving is amazing, but almost keeping us all on the same page, all level-headed with it. So that was a really helpful tool for me, and so I think with that has been really, really good.
Me and Rhi talk about this quite a lot, because Rhi and I had this conversation around, like, competitions at one point, and Rhi said that one of her goals was to get X percentage, and I said to her, I was like, the difficulty is we don't have any control over what other people's opinions are going to be, and that's obviously got a wider connotation, but it's so good to hear that even at this very, very top level, that your goals were to have fun, to remember why you were there, to, you know, have a good experience, and for the experience and the feeling to be the thing that you were focusing on, not the score. Because, like you say, you know, Shirley, the judge, might really not like Fanta, and what can you do? And if your goal was that, and it's outside of your control. So I just think it's such a nice reminder that even when you go into the Europeans, that this is what our goal, you know, this is how we can goal set. It's not just the amateurs or the lower levels or whatever. Everybody is on the same wavelength. So that's very cool. It's really cool to hear that.
Yeah. So, Jemima, what would the path towards LA look like? Hypothetically speaking, obviously.
In a nutshell, we would be certainly looking at trying to get to a show where I'd need to fly out with Fanta, because obviously he's never experienced that. So that's something that you'd kind of want to make sure that was done beforehand, because you need to give faith to the selectors about who they're sending. So you again, it's having that control over what can we control, what can't we control. Definitely some more, internationals abroad. It's different riders and different judges that are seeing you on the continent, and that's the thing. We need to get that under our belt, and it's every time it's learning. It's how he recovers after a long trip, and how does he respond to, like, so the setup at the Europeans might be very different to a normal international. So it's every time it's going away, and it's an educational trip as well as obviously wanting to do well. So then we would be looking at trying to get to Worlds, because Worlds is the qualifier for LA. And so, we want to get those big championships, our name on it, basically, because that is championship experience, it's knowledge, it's how to gain the little margin of marks that we can pick up, what judges. And so I think it is absolutely building our CV, basically.
Yeah, I love it.
That's really cool. When you are going to the Europeans, which must be the most exciting thing, so you talked about your shopping list, what are the things that you will be doing for Fanta to make this as positive and as wonderful experience for him as it will be for you? Because obviously he doesn't really know that he's going to the Europeans and how cool that is. So are there things that you implement to make sure that he is like having the best experience possible?
So we have organised, so he's got overnight stabling on our first leg of the journey to break it up for him, so he's not stuck in the lorry for absolute hours on end. We always travel with our Saracen's recovery mash, so he can get it mid-journey, and also he is such a good traveller, so we actually open up the partitions quite wide for him so he can move around, get his head down. Like, that is such an important thing for the horses when they're travelling long journeys. So we'll stop more often because it's just going to be Maisie and I in the lorry this time. And then he'll have the recovery mash and be fed off the floor in the lorry. We always travel with horse hage, so it's less dusty for him in the back. I also feed him science supplements, so I know that he's hopefully got the best breathing that he can possibly have. And then they've actually requested that we have the larger, basically double stables when we're away, just so that all the horses can have as much movement, and then can stretch more, lie down more, big beds, all on shavings. So they're really trying to look after the horses, and they'll get lots of hand walking done. He'll always go for a walk around the arenas, in hand, so he goes in the ring and can almost absorb the atmosphere. So every morning he'll, instead of just a leg stretch around the stable block, he'll actually go to experience the arena, but with no pressure, no stress. Georgie will always do that with him because she knows him so well, in terms of ridden wise. So, and she does the groundwork, so she can, do a couple of turns with him. And then Maisie, super groom, just knows him in and out, and so he'll be looked after with physio. He'll also, I always take a NAF salt lick. He'll have one in the lorry, and because he loves them, so he can naturally have help himself to that. We'll just look after him like we do on a normal day, but he doesn't have turnouts, so he'll just have more leg stretches and walks and nice massage. Use the equilibrium massage pad on him.
I loved it. That's so nice. It sounds like you have such a good system for him, I guess. And I suppose it's one of those things, isn't it? It's not a particularly natural thing for horses to go and travel long distances across the country, but it really sounds like you've understood that, and that you're doing your best within a difficult situation. I wonder if one day they will provide little pens or something that shows.
I often think about this.
Would be able to actually let horses have free time. It'd be very interesting. There might be some disastrous instances initially where horses, in an unknown environment, but maybe one day. It's really lovely to hear though. You obviously have such a like a friendship with him. You know, he's not just an athlete, he is a real partner. And that's, I think, well, very honourable and wonderful.
Honestly, everyone jokes when I come in the yard because he's like starts to knock on his door or anything like that. He is a real people person. Like if he's having physio, I can't really stand in front of him because he just tries to walk out the whole time. We do have a very special relationship. Like I'm sure everyone really does with their horses. But like Georgie, because his character is so he always lobs his feed bucket out when he's finished with it. He's like, "Excuse me, can you do my washing up, please?" But she's put him on the end stable right next to like the wash bay and like the storage area, and he's like, "Oh, thank you. I get all the cuddles now every time." And then when that horse finishes and gets a carrot, I get a carrot too. Like he's just so spoiled because of his personality, and he knows it as well. But yeah, like I'm very lucky because he is particularly special. I love him to bits.
Oh, that's really lovely. We have a closing tradition on this podcast, Jemima, and don't worry, it's not scary. But I asked the same question, and the question is, if you had one thing that you could say to every equestrian and they had to listen, what would that one thing be?
I was very much under the impression I couldn't get back to doing what I could do. And I think it's believe in what you want to do, but you just have to find a new way of doing it. It doesn't mean it's wrong or right, and things aren't ever going to be the same, but there's no reason why you can't find a new way of doing things. Yes, I'll never be able to jump around cross-country courses again. Like that's just no. But, you know, my main thing was, even if I can just go for a hack, that was going to be an achievement for me. And it's just finding this new way and of getting around it and just opening your eyes of how can I make this work. There's no such thing as no in my eyes, really, for some things.
No doubt that will be very inspiring for people, because you know, goodness knows there'll be difficult things happening for people all over the world all of the time. And I think limitation and physical limitation can often make things seem like an impossibility. And I feel like, Jemima, you are the definition of the opposite of that. And that's very amazing.
A friend of mine gave me a bracelet not long after my accident, and this was a quote saying she believed she could, so she did. And that has stuck by me for such a long time. And I'm like, I'd never heard that quote before, and I'm like, that is 100% how I live my life.
Can we get that on a t-shirt?
It's great. Well, I'm very proud of you, obviously watching from afar like a weird stalker, but I'm really excited for you to go to the Europeans. I think everyone should follow you and Fanta and watch you together, because you're just fabulous. And yeah, watch this space.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. No doubt you have brightened a few people's days who may have been having a bit of a hard one. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. We'll see you soon.